Hello, and welcome to all of you who are joining us from every continent today. Thank you for being with us on this most auspicious of days, the 6th of January, the day that marks the official opening of the first Casa dei Bambini in Rome in 1907. This casa and the many others that immediately followed it were opened for children in one of the poorest districts of Rome and gave rise to some of the major insights of our Montessori approach to education. One of the most important principles that we follow is that learning environments should be constructed to optimally support children's development, and that this principle needs to be followed not only with regard to the content of the environment, but also to the actual design of the spaces that the school occupies. We also believe that beautiful Montessori learning environments should be available to children all over the world, regardless of their background or economic status. With that in mind, AMI and the Arthur Vasa Foundation have been working with the architects Benjamin Stæhli and Steve Lawrence to create a simple design instrument, freely available to all, to enable sustainable, simple, beautiful learning environments for Montessori teachers and children to be constructed or created the world over. The story we will tell today connects 2 continents and a number of countries. Dr. Victoria Marwa Heilman of Tanzania will be talking to us, actually from the USA today. Benjamin Stæhli of the Arthur Vasa Foundation is connecting in from Switzerland, and architect Doreen Fred from the Architectural Pioneering Consultants of Tanzania is talking to us from Dar es Salaam. So that we may begin this story, may I first introduce Dr. Victoria Marwa Heilman, who is a practicing architect in Tanzania. She is the founder and managing director of Alama Architecture, a company that she started in 2012 while teaching at RD University. Victoria is passionate about helping communities in need through her knowledge and expertise in architecture. She is the co-founder of Tanzania Women Architects for Humanity, TAWAH, an NGO that works together with women and youth to build adequate shelter for poorer, underserved communities in Tanzania. Victoria holds a PhD in architecture from the University of Stuttgart, a master's degree in architecture from the Catholic University of America, and a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Dar es Salaam. So her experience spans a number of continents also. Victoria was a Ford Foundation IFP Fellow in 2004, an Eisenhower Fellow in 2006, and a Mama Hope Global Advocate in 2020. And so I'm going to pass you over to Victoria now so that you can hear the beginning of this amazing story.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm a practicing architect in Tanzania and a very strong advocate of decent shelter for all, and we're based in Dar es Salaam. And I started my career in architecture as an educator. So I was teaching at the university since I graduated in 2001. And worked until 2018. And then I decided to focus my remaining years on this earth to work with communities that I felt there is a contribution that I can make to improve their lives. But when I was teaching at the university, I was also working as a volunteer with Habitat for Humanity Tanzania. That is where exactly where I got my passion to start working with poor communities, because some of the projects that we've been doing was to go to rural areas and see how people live, which is quite the opposite of how we live in Dar es Salaam, in the city center. And when you see people struggle with scarcity to get by, that's when I felt as architects, we have a duty and responsibility to change that. But then the question remains, how? How do we do it? Because if we look at the education in architecture, especially in my country, the curriculum is structured more to serve people who have the resources to pay us. And those who really don't have resources I felt like they're left behind. And I think that was one of the reasons we started this organization of Tanzania Women Architects for Humanity, mostly to use our architecture to improve shelters for people in need. But how can we do this as an architect? I think this is most of the focus area that I wanted to touch on today, and see, architects, what can be done? How can we help our communities? How can our education really empower us to go back to poor communities and improve the shelters? And I believe this is what Maria Montessori would want to see, and that's what she started. So we have a work to do. But for me, I started my kindergarten and my primary school in early 80s in Dar es Salaam. And since then, and even after independence in 1961, the education system has been transforming up until today. The first transformation was just after independence in 1961, was more looking into eliminating inequality in access to education. Whether you're rich, you're poor, we all have to get access to education. But then in the 1967, it kept on changing to enhance more like self-reliance through education. We have the children go to school, but at the same time, they have to come up with their skills that they can work in the community. And at that time, primary education became compulsory for all kids in Tanzania. And then in the early 2000, starting 2002, that's when primary education became free and compulsory for all children in Tanzania. And this has been transforming up until today. But all this transformation came with some advantages. There where we started seeing a number of increase in enrollment of children in schools. But then the resources that we have to be able to cater for that, to be able to accommodate that increased number of the students and kids in primary level is not enough. And I think this is not just for Tanzania. I think it's for many countries in the developing world. We have our children, we want them to get a better education, quality education, but then the resources are failing us. So that's a major challenge that we have now. And recently we received COVID relief funds, and those were mostly channeled in the education sector. Building more classrooms, providing other infrastructure like water and toilets for kids to be able to learn, and at the same time to fight with the COVID pandemic that we have at the moment. So there are a number of challenges that we still have to deal with, mostly in providing infrastructure in Tanzania. And when you look at the design of the spaces that we have and what we are working on in the education sector, is we do have the guides from the Ministry of Education on how shall we design our schools, what is needed in our schools. And I believe it's not just in Tanzania, it's a conventional way of learning where we have the hierarchy. Knowledge is being transformed from the teacher to the students. Even the design itself is really like enhanced that. You have all the students facing the teacher and learning. So that has, it's the way of teaching at the moment. But then if you look at the study that have been done by UNICEF in 2018, they were also looking into the skills. How are this way of educating our children help them to have more skills that can help them to solve problems and not just passing exams, which is the main assessment for the student to be able to pass from grade 1 to grade 2. You have to pass the national exam or school exams and things like that. So skills in really solve problems, I think it's something that we still lack. And I believe the government is working so hard to find different ways on how we can teach and learn to be able to come up with a better way of solving problems that we have. But all these transformation that we're talking about for primary level education, it's looking at from age of 6 maybe to 14 years, where children are going to a primary school level. But what is happening before that then? Age of 1 up to 6 before they go to primary school. So this is more left into the families and resources that they have. Most of the kids, especially in the rural area, you find they don't go anywhere. They just play at home until they get the age of 7, go to primary school, maybe a year before, go to kindergarten. So that lack of access to a good foundation before going to primary school, I think it also reflects in the studies that have been done by UNICEF, where you have the skill set solving problems is lacking, because sometimes the foundation that we get at the kindergarten level is missing. So for me, I was very lucky to be able to be exposed to the Montessori architecture in the early 2017, when I was asked to coordinate the design competition in Tanzania. And starting to study what is Montessori architecture, I got to an understanding that I did not have it before. All my years in studies in architecture, I was not exposed to that. But my understanding of Montessori philosophy, Montessori teaching was more to education for maybe the Catholic believers. That's what I thought. And when you look at the kindergartens for Montessori schools in Tanzania, they're more private schools. So those who can afford will be able to access that education. And those who cannot afford, then we wait for the conventional way of learning. So being part of the organizing this competition really opened my eyes, and I still believe that we are lacking that knowledge, not just me, not just few architects who participated in the competition, but I think in the bigger picture, as architects who are designing schools and we have guides from the ministry, we are lacking that knowledge on what Montessori teaching is all about and how the schools are supposed to be. And until today, there's a major problem of infrastructure development, especially in schools, building classrooms, building other facilities that are needed in the schools. It's still a problem in Tanzania. That's why I said this is just recently, we got COVID relief funds. They're directed to building more classrooms in schools, putting sitting benches. So it's still a major problem, which I think can be solved, and getting more understanding of Montessori design and architecture. It's something that can help us solve a major problem that was also uncovered by the UNICEF study. So I am not an expert in Montessori architecture. I am still learning. And at this point, I would also like to invite my friend and my colleague, Benjamin, maybe to talk more about his journey on uncovering Montessori architecture, what is it all about, and the contribution that he has been doing in Tanzania to promote this Montessori philosophy and helping our community of architects in Tanzania to be able to participate in solving these challenges that we have. Thank you. So I'll pass over to Benjamin.
Thank you, Victoria, very much indeed. And before Benjamin starts, I'd just like to let everyone know a little bit about Benjamin. Benjamin, you have worked as a scientific team leader at the Future Cities Laboratory at the National University of Singapore, and as a town project coordinator at the Federal Institution of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland. You also spent 5 years in Ethiopia coordinating the implementation of a model town. And then in 2017, you joined the Arthur Bassa Foundation. And there you have been, in collaboration with AMI, moving around the world, working on some architectural ideas and patterns that reflect and support Montessori approach and also children's development. And I think you've just recently returned from Tanzania with a series of workshops connecting Montessorians and architects together so that they can learn from each other how to build better learning environments for children. So Benjamin, can I pass over to you now? Thank you. And thank you, Victoria, very much. We'll hear from you a little bit later too, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much. And thank you, Victoria. Yeah, well, I don't know how to start, but I think what Victoria referred to, it was a very crucial moment for us in the history of what it's now called Montessori Architecture. In fact, the first time we met, it was in 2017. And we already learned by then that Tanzania has an extremely fast growing population and a high demand for schools and kindergartens. And but also a very small number of architects. In fact, in 2011, there was a study which was at the Architecture Biennale in Venice, and it showed the ratio between inhabitants and architects. And if you take Italy, a European country, you have like 1,400 inhabitants for each architect. And if you go to Tanzania, which is more at the bottom, and you have like 70,000 people for each architect. So that means that the responsibility for an individual architect in Tanzania is significantly higher than the responsibility of an architect in Italy. So the question was, how would we help? How can we help the architects in Tanzania to live up to this incredible responsibility? And in 2017, I had just joined the TAWAH Foundation. And what is interesting about the foundation is that the guys there, they pursue a strategy which is in fact very similar to the Montessori philosophy. You see, what I learned from the Montessori philosophy, and I'm not a Montessori myself, but one thing I learned is that you let the child be the guide. It's not the child which need to be fixed. It is rather the other way around. It's us who usually have to be fixed by the children. And the whole global aid, or what it is now called foreign assistant business, has been driven by the arrogant assumption that the rich world, because they are rich, knows what needs to be fixed in poor countries, and therefore also can bring the solutions. We, on the other hand, we believe, and we also experience, that it is the local societies which know their problems far, far better, and which are highly motivated to find internally grown solutions to their problems. And I think this very much sounds like what is happening in a Montessori classroom. So in our case, it means that in a form of, let's call it a participatory collaboration with local actors, the foundation only supports local initiatives and projects. So for instance, in Tanzania, local partners of the foundation have been active for many, many years in providing Montessori education to, meanwhile, probably thousands of children and hundreds of new Montessori AMI certified Montessori teachers. In some neural points, the foundation provides funds allowing partners to achieve their objectives, one of which is the building of new Montessori kindergartens and schools. This is one of the things we do. So what Victoria was so impressively pointing out became very apparent in a recurring problem for the foundation to provide fundings, since only in very, very rare occasions, the design of the planned kindergartens and schools reflected a child-friendly architecture. And I really want to stress this again, and also I want to be fair, this is not a particular Tanzanian or even African problem. I mean, since all of you, you sit now in the front of a computer right now, you can actually try yourself the following small experiment. So if you go to the search engine of your choice in your browser, and you just type in school plan, you will find out that everywhere on the planet, you find a remarkable uniform pattern. Let's try myself. So I go to a search engine. So you find, yeah, it's true. So you find a very uniform pattern. You can do it yourself, of the same separated square-shaped rooms, usually military organized along straight lines, often around a courtyard, with a flagpole in the center, every morning to salute. So regardless of where you sit right now, many years ago, you most probably sat in a classroom which was shaped so that you and your friends could be constantly observed by the teacher from every point in the room. There was no place for you to hide from the teacher. So the typical square-shaped classroom, which we all know, is a reflection of how most of us adults see children, namely as unfinished subjects which cannot be trusted. So now back to the TAWAH Foundation, the conundrum was how to support the partners, but without further materialize an architecture which is quite literally sabotaging the incredible benefits of Montessori education, which, as we all know, it's characterized by learning by doing and a strong emphasis on independence and freedom within limits. So the first impulse, which comes naturally to people who didn't go to Montessori school, is to solve this problem with the idea of blueprints. You know, ready-made architectural plans of perfect kindergartens and schools, different sizes, which would be handed over to people such as Victoria, to everyone who wants to build a kindergarten or school. Very easy, right? An easy solution to solve this problem. But for Steve Lawrence and myself, it soon became clear that the provision of ready-made architectural plans, regardless of a cultural, environmental context, would completely diminish the creative talents of local architects. Interestingly, this stance is supported by the fact that Dr. Maria Montessori herself, she never defined a particular formal architecture. So even if we wanted to provide blueprints, we wouldn't have been able to do so. And so in analogy to another architect who's still alive, is now in his 80s, Christopher Alexander, and his 1977 book, A Pattern Language, Steve and I decided that instead of blueprints, we would deliver a design instrument with a series of design tasks to architects, which we called patterns, which would serve architects and laypersons in consideration, of course, of their economical means, of the cultural and environmental context, to create an individual, inspiring learning environment for children and for teachers. And in order to do that, we went to some of the most exceptional examples of kindergartens and schools all over the world, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, where despite an incredible broad spectrum of completely different cultural and environmental conditions, children showed a remarkable good-spirited behavior, and Montessori architects somehow managed to achieve a similar positive and inspiring atmosphere. Now, from those schools and kindergartens, we have literally taken thousands of photographs, have done hand drawings of characteristic features, have been redrawing all the plans and sectional drawings, all in order to understand the nature of Montessori architectural patterns. And so we eventually were able to distill 28 recurring patterns, which we then compiled in a first prototype design instrument. And so in 2019, when we met again Victoria in Dar es Salaam, and she asked us, did you find a solution for our problem? We then answered, well, no, we thought you will find the solution yourself. So here you have these 28 design tasks, and once you have solved them in a certain order, you get a solution. So I think it was clearly not what she expected. But Victoria is a great person, and she responded, okay, let's test it. So Victoria, she organized an architectural competition for two model Montessori campuses in Tanzania, in a demand of two local organizations, partners of the TAWAH Foundation. Yes, this competition was open to all Tanzanian architects who agreed to develop design proposals in testing the prototype versions of the design instrument. And yeah, I don't know, Victoria, would you like to say something about the competition?
Yeah, I can add a little bit on how we did it. When we decided we were going to do, because we were debating whether to hold a competition for registered architects, or we include the students, or we were not sure, but eventually we ended up into, based on the regulations in Tanzania, if you want to involve registered architects, it has to go through the Tanzania Architects and Quantity Surveyors Registration Board. So in the end, we ended up having only registered architects to participate in the competition. All architects from all over Tanzania. And in addition to the requirements from the client, from our so-called clients, those who are benefiting from those two schools, and requirements for the site and all that, then we had that instrument that we needed to test and see how would a local architect will take that and use that as a guide to come up with a design that is specifically based in the local context. So when we advertise in the newspaper, we're able to get 23 entries for both two sites. And most of the architects were from Dar es Salaam. But then in the process, we kept on going and evaluating. And in the evaluation process, we had local architects, and they were also given that guide. They had to learn and understand what Montessori architecture and the design that is expected, and things that need to be considered in addition to local guide and a brief that we gave them. So jurors also had to learn, and the participants also were learning, and jurors also were guided by a committee of the staff that from Martha Foundation, who really got the a better understanding of what Montessori architecture is. So it was a learning platform for both of us, from the participant, jurors, and everybody was teaching, so everybody. So for me, I was just a coordinator. I wanted to make sure that this competition follow country's regulations, and this competition is free and fair, and everything has to be communicated very well with everybody. So we all learn. So through the process, there were interviews. So all participants were followed in their offices and they were interviewed to get a better understanding on how they see that book and how are they taking it. Because like Benjamin said, we didn't really want them to take it as a checklist. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and everything is done. No, we wanted them to use it as a guide and tailor to the context. So that was done. So we got our winners, 2 winners for this competition for 2 different sites, and they all have, the submission, some of us were, like I said, it was a learning platform even for me. It's like, okay, someone will take this guide and come up with the design. When you look at it, it really fits well with the context. And it's not like the Montessori schools that we see in Europe are in Tanzania. No, I think the context was well considered. And what we are doing now, we have put all these winning projects, the top 3 winning projects, in the exhibition. So we have the exhibition going on now in Dar es Salaam, and it's open to public. And the goal is to continue teaching about Montessori. So we're spreading a word for those who are interested to go and see the exhibition and learn. So I don't know if I should continue maybe from there. I think we're very much happy to even to showcase one of the winning projects from this competition. And we had 2 companies. One is called Architectural Pioneering Consultants Limited in Dar es Salaam. And another winner for the different projects was Flint and Best. They're all in Dar es Salaam. But today we have a representative from APC, Architectural Pioneering Consultants, Doreen Fred, who will take us through the winning projects that she has prepared for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. And Doreen, as a representative of your organization, the Architectural Pioneering Consultants, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about where the project is and who you'll be serving and how it's moving on. So we're very happy that, may I just say also that we're actually showcasing pioneering women in Tanzania. That has to also be a reflection of Maria Montessori's contribution also in her time to being a woman that led the way. So thank you very much, Victoria. And if you are ready for us, Doreen Fred is going to take over and tell you a little bit about the project that she has pioneered and led. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you, Victoria. I'm very glad to be part of this talk today. It's an honor to be part of the Montessori conversation. And the project that we are working on as Architectural Pioneering Consultants is the Simba Vision School that is in Meru region in Engarananyuki area in Gambobo village. So the school is in quite a remote area in the Maasai lands, and there is where the construction is currently taking place. So I'm going to take you through a few slides that will elaborate further on the project and also on what Architectural Pioneering Consultants it really is. So I will now share my screen and invite you all to go through this presentation with me. I hope you can all see my screen. So this is the Simba Vision Montessori School that is in Engarananyuki Meru region. And this is a render of, or the final image of what we intend the school to be soon after its completion. And this project is done by APC. APC Architecture. Sorry. By Architectural Pioneering Consultants, which is a registered company under AQRB, which is the Architects and Quantitative Affairs Registration Board in Tanzania, but also registered by the TIC, which is the Tanzania Investment Center. So APC has working experience for over a decade and has been working on different projects, from school projects to hospital projects to many other projects in the community and in the context of Tanzania. So APC is run under a series of directors. We have 4 directors who have much experience in architecture and have experience in academia as well. So they have a number of experience in different projects and running different projects in the country. And APC also has a team of young architects. I've just provided a list of some of the architects that have been working with the firm from the beginning when it started till the moment. And there's so many young architects who have been a part and parcel of APC and has been working continuously on different projects in the company. So I'm going to jump right to the competition. So the competition featured a number of buildings that all had to be built in a site that is in the Gabobo region. And this, what you can see now, is the entire site plan for the competition phase. So we had the school buildings, we had workshops, we had the children's house, we had staff houses, we had teachers' houses, and we had a common gathering area. And all these had to be incorporated into the site that was that we were given. So all these functions and all these buildings had to be related to the Montessori design instruments that we were handed. And that was a really good learning experience for us as well as a firm to understand what Montessori education is before we even approached the project or before we even sat down and start designing. We had to first understand what Montessori education is, what does it entail, what does it require. So that way we got a proper insight of how we're going to design these buildings, how we're going to orient the buildings, what functions are we going to include, which are part and parcel of the Montessori architecture. So furthermore, now we're at the construction phase, and in the construction, we're now building in phases, and now we're doing the school building, which is now under construction. And in the future, we are hoping to move forward to the other buildings as mentioned earlier. So all the other buildings that were part of the initial competition stage, that is what we're going to be working on. So the building has 2 floors. We have the ground floor and the first floor. On the ground floor, we have a series of learning spaces, all of which are interconnected to each other. And in each learning space, from one learning space to another, we have a covered gathering area that is the common meeting area, but also an extension of the classrooms where the children and the teachers can use this space as a gathering space or as a learning space as well. But within the same plan, we have small niches, whereas in these niches, the children can seclude themselves or can have small group readings or big group readings in all these spaces that we have provided. The same applies to the first floor. So in the first floor, we have also learning spaces, and in these learning spaces, the children can learn in these spaces. And again, the same plan is repeated on the top floor, where you have the integration of small niches, we have integration of larger niches. So this accommodates children of different, who have different needs at different times as well. And also you can see that the building is interconnected like pearls in a string. So we have highly avoided the use of corridors. So each and every space can be utilized or can be used with the teachers and the students as a learning space and as a learning area. Furthermore, I'm going to move down to the sections and the elevations. So these are our sections and elevations. And from the sections, you can start seeing the different Montessori patterns or the different patterns that were elaborated in the design instruments, such as the use of different levels and the use of different materials. So all these patterns were highly considered and incorporated into the design. So I'm going to briefly just showcase the Montessori design patterns as per the design instruments. And we had 26 patterns that we had to learn, to understand, and then to think of a way on how we're going to incorporate all these into the design of the Simba Vision School. So today, I'm just going to highlight a few that I'm going to display today, but all these patterns were highly considered and were highly taken into consideration into the design. So just to make the presentation short, I'm just going to concentrate on the ones that I have highlighted in the presentation, and I'm going to walk you through each individual one of them. So this was one of our design bubbles that we had during the design stage when we were thinking of how we're going to integrate all these design patterns into the design, and how are we going to incorporate all the knowledge that we have got from Montessori architecture and Montessori education. How are we going to integrate all these into the design of the school? So this was just some scribbling that we took all the 28 design patterns and tried to see how we're going to incorporate all these instruments into the design. So first, we have the hierarchy of interconnected spaces adapted to children's activities. So the project layout allows for easy orientation and easy movement from one building to the other. This is at the site level. So the heart of this design is the common greeting hall, which is the central area where all the children and all the teachers can meet and can have different activities. And then this connects all the entire campus of the school. So from the common greeting area, you can access the different classes, you can access the teachers' housing, you can access the children's home, but also we have different integration of different spaces, as explained earlier, that we have the big spaces such as the learning spaces, and we have the small spaces such as the niches, which we have large niches and small niches. And all these are properly organized or arranged in such way that the students and the teachers can interact from one class to the other without any intrusion. But in the same slide, we can see other patterns that have been applied in the design. So we have the orientation of the buildings to the east, and this is to allow the children to have the introduction of the morning sun as they enter the classrooms, as they enter the learning spaces. So they're greeted by the morning sun that brings positive energy to the children as they approach the classrooms. But also you can see pattern number 25 and 26, where it encourages that children should participate in motor activities and also should participate in keeping of animals and also farming. So this is well integrated into the western side of the school. So I'm also going to move to the next slide, where I'm going to talk about pattern number 2, which is different heights of floors and ceilings, even in a single-story building. So through the Simba Vision School, we have introduced different levels where children can sit. So children can use the floor as a working area due to the different levels that have been introduced. So children are able to sit and work on the floor. Children are able to seclude in the niches. We have steps where children are able to sit on different levels and are able to use the floor as a learning materials. And we also have the ceilings, which have different heights. So for example, the image here shows the covered gathering area, which is a space where children gather and meet. So it has high ceilings, and children it's very airy because of the high ceilings. But if you enter the learning spaces, the ceilings are a bit lower. And if you go to the niches, the ceilings get more lower. So here the children are more secluded and the children have more privacy and they can explore things and learn things on their own. There is also a small blow-up section where you can see different levels and how they're integrated in the small niches. And all these are in relation to the Montessori design patterns. Another pattern that I'm going to talk about is the connecting function of the greeting space and the avoidance of corridors. As previously explained, that all the spaces are more or less arranged as pearls in a string. So you move from one class to another without corridors. So you can easily move from one class to the other, from one class to the covered gathering space, from one class to the other class without the need of corridors. So all these spaces can highly be utilized and can highly be used as learning spaces for the children. So this is the greeting space where the teachers can decide to extend the classroom from the classroom borders and go outside to where the covered gathering is, and they can come back to the classroom later on and another class can use that. So this is really a space where the teachers and the students can highly use. Another pattern is the use of walls and the building fabric as storage spaces and also storage, open storage and displaying. So this was highly considered in the design, and we have tried to integrate the shelving of the storage of books into the walls. So the building fabric is highly integrated with all these bookshelves and all these storage areas. So we have all these integrated into the walls. And while learning about Montessori education, we also learned that it is quite important and very important for the children to be able to see what is displayed in these shelves and to be able to reach out for themselves and take a certain material or a certain thing in these shelvings or in these storage spaces. So all these cabinets and all these shelves are quite open, so we just have shelves in between, so children are able to access and to take any material or to take any learning instrument from these shelvings. And also there are different steps that are introduced, so even the younger children have the possibility of taking the books or the learning equipment from these shelvings. Furthermore, the offer of seclusion, but with respect to concentrated activities. So we have introduced the niches, and within these niches, children can organize themselves in groups of small groups of 2s or of 3s, and can be able to have a separate learning experience without obstructing the other children in class, or can seclude and learn by themselves. We also have smaller niches where a fewer number of kids can be accommodated, and all these are integrated into the main learning space. So in the learning space, we have the big learning space where all children can learn, but then we have the niches where children can seclude and have a more concentrated studying. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the transition of the spaces inward and outward. So we have a gradual transition between the inside and the outside. When you're inside the building, you're still able to experience the nature of the outside as Montessori education entails. I'm not very much of an expert, but from what I have tried to learn is that it really entails children to learn from the environment, to understand what the environment means. So we have tried to really incorporate this into the design as well. So the doors are open to the outside, where the teacher can decide that the children can learn on the outside area, but then the outside is also quite shaded with a good roof overhang, so the children will remain under the shed and they can still learn. But also inside the classroom, you have the open areas such as this, where the kids can stand outside and enjoy nature and get some fresh air and then return back to class for learning. So this is just an overview of an aerial view of how the project looks. This is not the current picture, so this just it's a good aerial photograph that I thought I would share with the entire group so that you can get the idea of the context of where the building is and where it's built and how it fits to the context of the area. This is also another area photograph showing the building. This was at the stage where they were doing walling on the first floor and they're already doing shuttering on the other floors. And lastly, this is just an image to further elaborate on the building. So I'm going to take you now to a short slideshow that will welcome you to the building process and will show you the building process from the beginning and where we're at now, so that we're all a part of this wonderful Montessori architecture construction experience. So now I'm going to take you straight to the video. So this is the project team. This was a meeting. So here we're setting out the building. This is when it was quite bare.
Doreen, we've lost.
Setting up.
Sorry, Doreen, we've just lost your screen. Could you share your screen again with us?
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. We all know that showing video on Zoom is one of those things you hold your breath about. So
I'm sorry, just trying to.
No problem. No problem. So while you're doing that, I'll just say that we've been trying to answer your questions in the chat. If you have some more questions, do put them there, and we'll again attempt, once Doreen's got her video working, we'll attempt to answer those afterwards. And can I just say, now I'm having a chance to look at you all, how lovely it is to see so many of you from all over the world, and some marvelous faces that I haven't seen in a long time, and some really welcome new faces too. So it is really lovely to see you. I can see that we have truly stretched from the west coast of America all the way right around the world and back to that west coast. So we've covered, I think, every continent and certainly every time zone. So thank you for those of you who have set alarms very early on, or alternatively are staying up very late. Here we go. Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you. So I welcome you to the video. So this was a site meeting, a meeting we had with the community to introduce them to the project. And this was the setting out of the building. After setting out the first excavation, now construction of the ground floor slab, the construction of the walls, shuttering process of different sides of the building. Here we had material coming into the building, the reinforcements. The reinforcement was now laid into the slabs. This was casting of the concrete of the first floor. So they were now casting the concrete. I think the quality is not so good, I think because of the network. So they were casting the concrete. So the concrete was casted. Now this was curing of the concrete. And because of the remoteness of the area, sometimes there is high water shortage. So sometimes we have to resolve to very difficult solutions on how to cure the buildings, for example. So this was a motorbike that we had to get immediately so that we can cure the concrete that was already casted. So now we have walls going up on other sections of the building, and other sections, the shuttering was going on. Now we have walls in all the buildings. Other elements like cobbles have been taken up. This is the central building. Reinforcement on the central building was going on. And now we have our learning spaces complete in the ground floor. And now they're doing the first floor. This is the first floor of the south building. And this is a walkthrough of how the building looks at the moment. So now we have completed the ground floor walling and the first floor walling, And we have also completed the ring beams up to the first floor. And currently we're working with the steel fabricators to fabricate the roofing trusses. And soon we're going to roof the building and start with the final stage, which is the finishing, before we go right next to the landscaping. So we had quite an interesting activity with the children. We wanted to include them in the building process. So we had an activity with them to pick up some of the stones from the riverbed. And this was quite an interesting activity because the children got to be involved in the entire process. So it was quite an interesting journey to have the children be part of the building process and to have the children excited about the new Montessori school that was coming in. So I'm really glad to share this experience with you and also to introduce and to further elaborate the Montessori education in Tanzania. And now more people are getting awareness, and through this project, many people have been able to understand Montessori and what Montessori means. So it has been such a great opportunity to work in this project. Thank you very much. I will now stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doreen. That was what an extraordinary work, and how resonating it is of the place in which you're building also, you know, in that particular area. Benjamin, can we come to you for the next steps? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. I really want to say that I just have been to Tanzania. I just went to the site myself, and in reality, it's even better than what you have seen on the photographs. It's going to be a beautiful African interpretation of Montessori architecture. In the middle of the Maasai and Meru territory. It's very remote. It's really beautifully embedded into the landscape. And the only thing I left to say is that based on the feedback by architects talented as Doreen, we spent the past 18 months to improve the original prototype of the design instrument. And as of today, the 6th of January 2022, the finished design instrument is now ready for all of you to be used online on the montessoriarchitecture.org. There you get free access, really free access to the description of all the 28 patterns, a worldwide growing repertoire of beautiful kindergartens and schools with photographs and plans all ready for you to copy. And for those of you who wish or who appreciate the tactile quality of a real book, beautifully designed by Nadine Wüthrich in Switzerland, Montessori Architecture, a design instrument, the title, is ready for you to order now. So all I'm left to say is thank you very much for this fabulous opportunity to be with you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's been a wonderful example of how in Montessori we give what's essential, and then we expect each and every individual or group of individuals and communities to make the best of what is essential and interpret it for their needs and for the way in which they want to build their children. So a really great presentation. So I must thank you all, Victoria and Benjamin and Doreen, for presenting to us today. I would also like to, I would also like to say to you all that the website will also begin to take on examples that you may have of your own environments where you can see that some of the patterns have been reflected and you would like to add them to the huge resource that then gets shared beyond yourself, beyond us, into the outer echelons of the world around us. So watch out for when we actually come to that moment when we ask you to submit your own photographs, perhaps your plans, that also reflect some of the patterns, so that again we can provide any visitor to the site with inspiration from all different cultures, all different types of resources. Some of you will be well-resourced, some of you will be really unresourced, but still these patterns can be interpreted and offered for the children to enable them to learn really well in beautiful, sustainable, culturally appropriate environments for human development. So watch the space on the website for that. And I know Benjamin's knowing that this is coming down the line will be the person who'll be helping us to triage it and also to make it available to everyone. We do have some time for questions, and now we've been doing our best to answer some of your questions as you've been going along. But if anyone has a question that they are burning to ask, now is the moment. Maybe you could put it in the chat. The last person I'm seeing is Connie. Thank you, Connie, for your comment. Is there anything that anyone would like to ask? And if there isn't anything, I actually have a question that I would like to ask. But first, I want to offer it to anybody here. Oh, someone is asking, this is for you, Doreen, why were you using so much concrete? That was a question that they're asking. Would you like to talk to that?
Yes, we were, as you can see, the remoteness of the area. So we were using material that was readily available in the location. So these blocks that we have used, they're right from the area, and they're produced in Sanyaju, which is right at the area as well. So it was a material that was easily got in the area and hence had to be incorporated into the construction of the building. Because of its remoteness, it was very difficult to transport materials from very far away and bring them into the site. So we had to work with the local people and to use the local materials that are available in that area.
Thank you very much, Doreen. And I see a question from Irini Fafalios in Greece. I think this could be to all three of you. How did you all work together so that the architects really understood the patterns from a Montessori perspective? So perhaps you all have perhaps a slightly different perspective on that. So Victoria, would you like to answer that to begin with? And then we can come to both Benjamin and Doreen for their answers.
Sure. Yeah, what we did when we announced the competition for architects to join in, we had the guidebook that we gave to all architects who were interested to join the competition. So, and we gave them time to read, understand all the patterns that they're for Montessori architecture. And on top of that, we also gave them like a design brief and all the information that they needed to be able to come up with the design. So guidebook was the main instrument that we gave them to start getting understanding of the Montessori architecture. But throughout the process, like I said, we now have the competition exhibition going on, the winning projects, and all the patterns are elaborated very well the way Doreen has explained. And that also gives our local architects to learn and understand about this Montessori architecture and the patterns that are needed. And recently we had the workshops going on in Tanzania, different parts of Tanzania. So those 4 workshops, we were specifically targeting architects and educators, the teachers who are using these spaces with the students. So that way we had the interaction and discussing how these spaces are important and how they've been used. And that was one way also we created a platform for local architects to learn and understand Montessori architecture. Yeah.
Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. You see, an interesting aspect of Montessori architecture, it's that it's not based on distinct design features. So with other words, there's not really a right or wrong. In fact, what we have been trying to do with the design instruments to provide very much like a Montessori sensorial material. So you would find out yourself as an architect if it is right or wrong, because once you feel it that you were able to fulfill a certain requirement as it is defined, then you know it's correct. And those patterns, they can be interpreted in many, many, many different ways. In fact, our premise is that those patterns can be applied in a variety of conditions and nearly irrespective of economical means. In fact, almost all of the 28 patterns, such as articulation of space, use of the floor as primary workplace, offer of seclusion, or the creation of window seats, can all be implemented within a single room even. So our aim is to provide something you would be able to understand yourself if you were successful or not. And since there's no right or wrong answer, it is very much like a Montessori material. So we hope we can achieve that. That's why we just put it out. The whole idea of the website is that you all can contribute to it. You can give feedback on the patterns, how you have implemented it. So you can learn from each other. You can learn from other architects, how they did it, also lay persons. And in this way, we really hope that we can learn from each other, doing things in many, many different ways. I don't know if this was a brilliant answer, but it's more or less what we are trying to do.
It was, thank you, Benjamin. It was. Doreen, how about you? Because you are the architect who had to read the patterns, you had to interpret those patterns, and you didn't have a Montessori education yourself, so you came at it really from almost a new book that you were opening up to guide you.
For us, it was first, before even going through the design instrument, was first to understand Montessori education. So to understand what that really means and what that entails. So soon after we got some understanding on that, and that is when we moved into the design patterns and to think of how we're going to incorporate the design patterns based on the knowledge we got of Montessori education. How can we tie them together to create a better space or a better learning environment for the children? But up to this moment, we're still also learning about Montessori, as you rightfully pointed out. Most of us, or me, for example, I learned it at a later stage. So up to date, I'm still learning about Montessori and still trying to get more and more informed about it. Through the workshops we had in the end of the year, those were quite helpful because we also got a chance to participate and to interact with different Montessori educators, different people who have direct access to the Montessori teaching. So through that, we also learned some things, and through that, we also got things that we can now, even at construction, again incorporate into the design. So since the building is still in construction, we're also learning and trying to get new things that we can introduce that will make the projects better and better and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doreen. And in fact, I I think one thing that's very interesting is that the patterns are arranged in a sort of like a bead stair. And if you look at those patterns, they of course can interconnect and connect with one another, but there are some things that need to be thought about from the beginning in perhaps a way that is slightly different from the way that architects might often think. So it's from the very beginning, you're thinking in a three-dimensional space and not just a two-dimensional space. It's not just about the spaces that the children will occupy and move through. It's also about the heights of the ceilings and the connection to the outside and how they might come into school in the morning and where the sun shines and what, so there's a whole range of things that the patterns help you to think about. Does anyone, Victoria or Benjamin or Doreen, want to say a bit more about that? No? Not really? Okay, all right. Are there any other questions? Someone is asking, how can the design patterns meet the needs of both typical children and children who have disabilities? Anyone want to answer that question? Victoria, Doreen, or Benjamin?
Well, Montessori architecture as Montessori education is not an exclusive type of education, nor is an exclusive type of architecture. I mean, all of the patterns, they do not refer to specific rules and regulations in countries even. I mean, for instance, if you have things like the avoidance of doors you will face a lot of problems in many different countries because of fire regulations, for instance. When it comes to different heights of floors and ceiling, then of course you would like to answer the question how you would be able as a handicapped person to get from one level to another. These are the questions which architects are still requested to answer. I mean, the patterns, they do not diminish the role of the architects to find answers to the everyday questions an architect needs to be able to answer. This is exactly the beauty of it. So it doesn't take away the responsibility of the architect to find a solution. None of the patterns is exclusive for a particular group of people. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This is what I can say about it.
And we also have a question. There are some people who are ambitiously building at the moment, and they would like to know, is there a way that they can contact us directly so they can get some help before they finally get into the building phase? And Benjamin, they can go onto the website and then they can send a question, and we're there to help and to guide and so forth. So please do take a look at the website, montessori-architecture.org. And as I say, once you get there, a lot of the patterns are there, and a way of actually connecting to Benjamin, and Benjamin is the connector to everybody else. So if we need help at any moment, Benjamin will reach out to the current Victoria or Doreen or anyone else that's been involved. And just to say that this is one school that we're very happy that is being built in Tanzania, but many architects and firms took part in the actual competition, didn't they, Victoria? And there is another school that also, with a completely different design, is also building using the same patterns. But Victoria, perhaps you could say a little bit about that, could you? Because that's that again, to show how it does really convey the expression of the place and the place that things are being built and the culture and the people around, wherever you are in the world.
Right. Now, maybe to go back a little bit on the inclusion of children with disabilities in the patterns that we have. I think there are guides, like Benjamin said, in every place, not only in education, in healthcare system and all that there are some considerations that need to be taken care of. So in the Montessori guidebook, yes, there is a pattern that says inclusion of children with all ages. That's what I initially had a conversation with Benjamin. I said, maybe this we could also add with all ages and physical ability so that it's very clear and it's loud, so everybody will have to take it seriously into consideration. Because other than that, yes, we might think we need to create these spaces, But then if we're not really very conscious of the children with disabilities, and maybe we decide to ignore these local guides that are there, yeah, at some point they may be forgotten. But I think, like you said, yeah, the guides are there, and in the Montessori is also expressing and really put more emphasis on inclusion, all ages, and the physical disabilities. But when you look at using the patterns in different contexts in Tanzania, yes, we've seen one example this is in Arusha region, but we have designs in Tanga, and another one is in Ifakara. So there are some components that may not really very straightforward in the patterns, but local context, and I think even the education of architecture and the lens that we're given in our education system is that we need to pay attention to the local context. What is there? What can we turn it into a resource? Sometimes maybe considered as a waste, but if we are conscious in that, we can consider it and use it. So other projects that we didn't get to showcase today is one in Ifakara is more like using bricks that are burnt bricks that are locally made at the site. And those burnt bricks are being burnt by using rice husks. That is a waste product in the context. So those are kind of considerations that as architects, I think with the skill set that we have, we go into and start looking into those things to add to the patterns that we have. So different areas, you will be able to see different types of architecture and material that we are using. And I think maybe it will feature later in the website those 3 different projects that are going on now. And you can be able to tell the difference and the architecture styles and material that we are using. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Well, I'm going to draw us to a close, although I do know lots more questions coming in the chat. But I want to finish, first of all, by saying that the real benefit of our community is that we are global, we are thoughtful, and we want to support children in their development in the best possible way we can. So each one of you, I hope, will be able to amplify whatever we've managed to give you in this short hour and a quarter in your own environments, with your own friends, communities, governments, wherever your influence extends and whatever the work is that you're doing. Let's each use the power that we have to make a difference at some level. Is this perfect? Of course, it's not yet perfect. Nothing's perfect, ever. We are a work in progress, because that's what we also believe about children. It's not about children, being ever at a fixed point in time. They are a work in progress. And along the way, in order to be that work in progress, sometimes things seem to be going well, sometimes things don't go so well, and you overcome them and you move forward. So what I want to say to you all really is, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's stay together in this spirit together of growth and learning and serving, because that is where each one of us can truly, in whatever way we're able, make a small difference. And if you can help us to help others to access the website, to see what the inspirations are we saying that the 28 patterns will remain 28 patterns forever? Of course not. Of course not. Through your thinking, your work, your feedback, your ideas, these patterns will change. They will become fuller. They maybe will become more elegant in the way that they go. Have we used some kind of descriptions that you might say, well, I wouldn't do that? Well, good, excellent. We're really happy about that. Let's together see if we can build for children and serve better. And so I want to thank you all on this 6th of January, this very special day, for coming together and spending the time with us. And we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to you contributing. We look forward to learning. And I particularly want to thank Benjamin Stæhli, Victoria Heilman, and Doreen Fred for their participation today and for the preparation of the work that they've been able to share with you. And we look forward to more collaboration with you all. Thank you so much indeed. And if you